They were born in log cabins, worked the fields. Some didn't even finish school. No silver spoons, no rich families, just grit, hunger, and the unshakable belief that they could lead a nation. Before they were commanders-in-chief, they were farm boys, tailors, and struggling lawyers. From chopping wood to signing bills, these presidents came from nothing and reached the very top. How did they go from poverty to power? What lessons can we learn from their rise? And trust me, you'll never guess who had to pawn their possessions just to survive before leading the free world. In the land of opportunity, success is promised to anyone willing to fight for it. But even in the United States, the road to the White House is rarely paved for the poor. Yet somehow, a few manage to rise from the dirt, the dust, and the silence of poverty into the most powerful office on earth. These were men who didn't inherit legacies. They built them, with blistered hands and borrowed books, with dreams too big for their wallets. They changed the course of American history, not with riches, but with resilience. What makes a leader? Is it wealth, power, privilege, or is it something deeper, something forged in hardship? Abraham Lincoln, born in a one-room log cabin, self-taught and self-made. Harry Truman, a failed businessman, nearly broke, yet called to lead during World War II. Bill Clinton, raised by a single mom in a troubled home, still found his way to the Oval Office. These aren't just presidents, they're symbols of possibility. So today, we're going to uncover the most inspiring presidential rise stories, leaders who started with nothing, but left behind legacies that still shape our nation. Each story is proof. Greatness doesn't come from where you start, but where you choose to go. Before he became one of the greatest presidents in history, Abraham Lincoln was just a boy living in a one-room log cabin in Kentucky. No electricity, no formal education, just endless wilderness and an even deeper hunger to learn. He lost his mother at 9, worked as a farmhand, and educated himself by borrowing books and studying law by candlelight. He earned the nickname the Railsplitter because that's exactly what he was doing while others were in classrooms. But his humble roots didn't limit him. They shaped him. Lincoln knew the pain of poverty and the power of perseverance. That's why, when the country needed a steady hand during its darkest hour, it turned to the man who had already weathered storms his whole life. Harry S. Truman didn't grow up dreaming of the presidency. He grew up in dirt, literally. Raised on a farm in Missouri, Truman worked long days and lived a modest life. He didn't go to college. He didn't have money. What he had was character. After World War I, he opened a men's clothing store, and it failed. He was broke, in debt, and nearly invisible in the political world. But slowly, through persistence and honest leadership, he climbed. Then, in 1945, suddenly and unexpectedly, Truman became president when FDR died. Just months later, he was faced with an unthinkable decision: whether to use the atomic bomb. The boy who once tilled soil now bore the weight of the world. Bill Clinton, the boy from hope. They called him the boy from hope. But hope was all Bill Clinton had growing up. Raised by a single mother after his father died in a car crash, Clinton faced instability, a troubled stepfather, and deep financial hardship. Yet from a young age he stood out. He was smart, driven, and fascinated by politics. At 16, he shook hands with President John F. Kennedy. That moment lit the fire. Clinton worked his way through college, became a Rhodes Scholar, and by his mid-40s, he was President of the United States. Love him or hate him, his rise from a tiny southern town to the global stage is undeniably remarkable. Andrew Jackson, the orphan-warrior. Long before he was etched onto the $20 bill, Andrew Jackson was an orphan fighting for survival. Born in a log cabin on the border of North and South Carolina in 1767, He lost his father before he was born, and his mother and brothers during the Revolutionary War. By 14, Jackson was alone, scarred from a British soldier's sword and full of fury. He never had a formal education, but he had fire. That fire turned him into a fierce lawyer, general, and political powerhouse. He rose through grit and sheer force of will, becoming the 7th President of the United States and the first born into poverty. Nicknamed Old Hickory for his toughness, Jackson's presidency was controversial, but his story remains one of brutal resilience. Barack Obama. Dreams from the South Side. Barack Obama's story is a modern-day climb, from modest beginnings to monumental history. Born to a single mother and raised in Hawaii and Indonesia, Obama often felt like an outsider in both worlds. He was raised by his grandparents, took out student loans to attend college, and found his calling not in wealth, but in service. On the south side of Chicago, he organized communities, listened to struggles, and built trust. Obama wasn't handed power. He earned it, speech by speech, campaign by campaign. And in 2008, when he was elected as the first black president of the United States, millions saw in him a reflection of their own rise. Lyndon B. Johnson. From a dirt floor to the White House. Lyndon B. Johnson grew up in the dusty poverty of rural Texas. His family lived in a farmhouse without running water. At times, they were so poor they couldn't afford shoes. But Johnson believed in the power of education. He worked as a teacher in poor Mexican-American schools before entering politics, where he never forgot where he came from. As president, he passed sweeping civil rights legislation and declared a war on poverty, because he knew what poverty felt like, and he knew America could do better. From cabins and cotton fields to campaign trails and the Capitol, these men proved that hardship isn't the end of the story. It's just the beginning. Because in America, the dream is real. You just have to fight for it. And now, let's take a closer look at each journey. Quotes: "The best way to predict the future is to create it." Lincoln, "The buck stops here." Truman, "Yes, we can." Obama. So what do these stories tell us? That greatness isn't about where you're born. It's about how far you're willing to go. These presidents didn't have wealth, but they had will. They didn't have privilege, but they had purpose. From log cabins and broken homes to the halls of power, their lives are proof that in the United States, even the most unlikely can become unforgettable. If these stories inspired you, imagine what you could do with your own story. So don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more powerful journeys, and drop a comment telling us which president's rise moved you the most. Because history doesn't just live in the past, it lives in you.